Have the gear down, please.
Speed's okay.
4 greens.
Okay, gear checks 4 greens. Nose.
It's down a green.
Checks. Brakes.
Checked. They're normal.
Landing check.
Hello again everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are back for part 2 of our transatlantic crossing in Concorde. If you'll recall from the first video, we had made our departure out of London Heathrow, tracked out towards the Bristol Channel. We then made our acceleration up towards Mach 2 and we are now tearing our way over the Atlantic at twice the speed of sound. We've also been edging our way up towards 60,000 feet. So for part 2 we now find ourselves approaching the eastern coastline of the United States. Again, I have tried to keep the flight as realistic as possible. We'll be using real-world routings, real-world checklists, techniques, procedures and charts, as well as real-world ATC, and once again I've included some real-world audio from the crew of Concorde. So for this second part in our mini Concorde series, we're going to be carrying out the descent and arrival into John F. Kennedy. Once again, I do hope you enjoy the video. If you do, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. We're just approaching our top of descent, so we'll head for the flight deck of Concorde once again, and we'll get the aircraft safely from 60,000 feet down onto the ground at New York's John F. Kennedy. So, welcome back to the flight deck. We're now cruising at flight level 600. We did manage to make our way up towards cruising flight level. We've got the auto throttle in, maintaining Mach hold. Just approaching the eastern US seaboard. We've made our way now over the bulk of the Atlantic. And we've got 75 miles to run towards waypoint Kenda. 60 miles to run is going to be our top of descent point. So we'll start setting up for our descent, initially going to be descending down to flight level 110. So we have 110 set. And we're going to be making a level deceleration back to 350 knots before we start the descent. So we'll preset that on the auto throttle. And we can set that as well on our airspeed indicator bug. And we have 350 knots. Just coming up on 60 miles to run, so we can start our descent. To initiate that, we'll take the auto throttle out. We can come out of Mach hold. And we'll start coming back on the thrust levers. Very slowly there, we're looking for 18 degrees TLA, or thrust lever angle. And that corresponds with the first triangle there on the TLA index.
Square 511, speed orange to campus.
Circus update 4511.
So thrust is set, that's giving us an N2 there of 93%. Running through our deceleration and descent checklist, our cleared altitude is set. Warning display is checked, briefing will carry out in just a moment's time. Airspeed indicator bugs are set, auto throttle is off, we have 350 knots pre-selected. And once we hit 350 knots we're going to go into IS hold. Throttle position is set, the flight engineer again hypothetically taking care of the fuel transfer for us. We'll move the fuel forward in just a moment's time into the descent configuration. Lastly, the engine flight rating is set to climb, and that's our deceleration and descent checklist complete. So just keeping a good eye there on our indicated airspeed and our Mach number. We have a checklist to carry out at Mach 1.6 and again hitting IS hold at 350 knots. Those two speeds should coincide, so we'll wait until we see one of those and then we'll continue on. In the meantime we can start briefing the arrival. We won't brief the approach itself though until we've gone through Mach 1.6. As I say, we're currently tracking inbound towards waypoint Kenda. We've got 28 miles to run there now. After that we're going to be tracking out to waypoint Lind, then on towards Owens, and finally on towards waypoint Cameron before we pick up waypoint Assault for the VOR approach onto runway 13 left at John F. Kennedy. We've already got all of our waypoints entered into the INS, and for the VOR approach itself that's based off the Canarsie VOR, which is on a frequency of 112.3. And waypoint Assault also based off the Sierra Bravo Juliet, which is 112.9. So we've got Canarsie on number 1, Sierra Bravo Juliet on number 2. And we'll just hold fire there. Again, we'll wait until we've gone through Mach 1.6 and then we'll continue on with our approach preparations. Speed coming back nicely, just approaching 350 knots. There's Mach 1.6, so looking to bring our thrust levers back to 34 degrees TLA. We'll talk more about that in a moment. There's 350 knots, so we're going to IS hold. So the checklist I'm using calls for 34 degrees on the TLA, which I suspect is accurate as that corresponds with the second TLA index. However, I have found on the Colomar to Concorde that tends to get us a little bit low and slow on the approach. I was reading somewhere else that 87% on the N2 is a pretty good power setting for the descent, so we'll come back to 87% N2. Again, just very slowly coming back on the throttles.
Near approach W794s with you 11 on 11000 and information takeoff.
Obviously just turning over waypoint Kenda currently.
794 near approach, heading 040, vector RNAV X-ray 22 left approach.
Alright, heading 040 for RNAV.
And there's our 87%. As you can see, that does have us quite significantly there above the second TLA index. Now that we're properly established in the descent, we'll have the flight engineer trim the fuel forwards for the descent centre of gravity.
Fuel trim to descent.
And we can bring our heading bug around to align with our present course. So the next checklist we're going to run will be at Mach 1.0. We've got a little bit of time there, still coming through Mach 1.4. We'll start briefing the arrival. Again, expecting the VOR approach for runway 13 left, coming in via the Canarsie VOR. We've got that tuned on number 1, we've got Sierra Bravo Juliet on nav 2. Tracking inbound on a course of 043 to Canarsie. So we'll set that up on nav 1. And the Sierra Bravo Juliet radial for waypoint assault is 105. So we have that set on nav 2. So we'll be coming over waypoint assault, that's 6 miles from the Canarsie VOR. After waypoint Cameron, we're going to turn to a heading of 350 to intercept the radial inbound towards assault.
Caution. Fuel status 20 tons.
Okay, just coming through 20 tons. Planning on arriving with around 15. We're probably going to be just below that, with it being my first Concorde flight. We're expecting some inefficiencies along the way. And we're still going to arrive with plenty of fuel should we need to go around or divert. So as I say, coming over the Canarsie VOR, tracking inbound then afterwards towards waypoint Delta Mike Yankee Hotel Lima. That waypoint's 3.2 DME off Canarsie, and then we'll be making our turn around to follow the track inbound towards runway 13 left. We've got a few visual landmarks there that we can follow. We're going to be initially following the contours of the main road, just out to the north of our track, and then we'll be turning over a hotel complex and some residential buildings as we come on to final for runway 13. Anyway, briefing the plate, it's 23-3. It's 112.3 for the Canarsie VOR, final approach course 041, we'll have to set that later on. Aerodrome elevation is 13 feet, descending down to an MDA of 800 feet. So we can set that now. And there's 800 on the rad out. It's actually 788 feet on the rad out, but we'll just go with 800, given that the granularity there on the selection is slightly reduced. Coming up now through 40,000 feet. We'll calculate our profile momentarily, see how we're doing in terms of our descent. And once we're picking up the VOR DMEs there as well, that'll help us quite significantly. Anyway, we're initially going to be descending down to 3,000 feet to track inbound towards assault. After assault we can descend down to 1,500. And then as we pass the Canarsie VOR, we'll continue our descent down to our MDA of 800 feet. Missed approach is at or beyond the missed approach point, climbing right turn up to 4,000, heading of 100 degrees, heading out towards the Delta Papa Kilo VOR to take up the hold. In terms of terrain, there's no real significant high terrain around JFK.
highest sector MSA 3,000 feet. We're just going to be avoiding that coming over the Canarsie VR, so our sector MSA is actually going to be 1,800 feet. Otherwise, not a bad day. It's overcast at 8,500. You can see already there we've got the overcast cloud layer. Temperature of 11 degrees, QNH is 2959, and there's a light wind out from the south. In terms of landing, we're landing on 05 left, planning to roll through, probably right till the end, and then vacate off to the right. We'll then track back, crossing an active runway, head in towards our stand. Just coming through Mach 1.0, so we'll run through our next checklist. So throttles need to come back now to idle. Again, just doing that very slowly.
December 511 cross campus 2,900, cleared on at X-ray 22 left.
Okay, copy, 2,900, clear the GPS to left, 511.
794 to center maintains 4,000.
Down 4,000 to 794.
So there's idle on the throttles, pressurization is set, pressure static heaters are on, transparency, de-ice and de-mist can go on.
30,000 feet.
Set the windshield de-ice to low, we're going to be coming through the cloud layer momentarily. Just come up through 30,000 feet, and obviously we're going to be entering into that cloud, so we'll get the engine anti-ice on. That de-mist is rather noisy, so we're just going to take that off again, I think, for the sake of the video. Anyway, we'll start calculating our descent profile here, so coming up through 27,000 feet. That means we need 108 miles to run. We're coming up on waypoint Owens. After Owens we've got another 90 miles. So currently got about 130 miles. We are definitely getting a little bit low here. As I said, the calling mile to Concorde seems to put me a little bit low, although it may be that I'm flying the profile slightly incorrectly. I've tried to read up online, so if anyone has any suggestions as to how things might be improved, I'd be very interested to hear. So for the time being, I think what we'll do is we'll just descend in VS. We'll go for a vertical speed of 2,000 feet per minute. And we'll get the auto throttle in. We'll go to IS acquire. We'll just maintain 350 knots for the time being. So that should shallow up our profile. We should trend back towards a reasonable 3-degree profile. Otherwise we're going to be really dragging the aircraft in on the approach. So just to finish up the briefing, as I was saying, we're going to be using braking below 100 knots. Obviously no spoilers on the aircraft, just the reversers. And I believe a good pitch angle reference for the flare is around 12.5 degrees, so we'll set that on the pitch index bug. Anyway, that's the briefing complete. Just coming up through 22,000 feet. So we need 88 miles to run. And coming up on 30 miles to run inbound towards Owens. So we have about 30 miles in excess of what we need here for the descent.
Banana 2, 7 left heading 360, the center maintains 3,000.
Left turn 360 down to 3,000, Chapter 902.
Flight 511, contact tower 119.1.
19-1 to the tower, 511, so long.
Okay, so we're just coming through 11,700 feet. We'll start our deceleration now back to 250 knots. And of course coming up on 1 to go as well. So that's 250, we'll go for IS acquire. Bring the speed bug back on the airspeed indicator. And we'll continue our descent now down to 3,000. Stay in vertical speed for the time being. And we'll go out acquire. Just coming up on 12 miles to run towards waypoint Cameron, and then we're going to turn off onto our heading of 350. We've already pre-selected that. There's flight level 110. As you can see, coming down now into the cloud layer. And again, we've got the engine anti-ice on to cover us off in terms of any icing.
Left turn heading 320, speed 210, chapter 900.
So just keeping a good eye on our speed, making sure we get back to 250 knots before we come through 10,000. Looks like we're going to be fine on that requirement.
250 knots.
Okay, we have IS hold. We're good on the speed. And coming up on 10,000, so we'll get the landing lights on.
10,000 feet.
We'll cycle the seatbelt signs.
Delta 2767, just going to maintain 4,000.
4,000, Delta 2767.
And we'll just hold off on taking the visor till we come out of this cloud layer, otherwise there's not going to be any real benefit to our overall visibility. Just be creating more drag on the aircraft, I would assume. So 9,000 feet, that means we need 36 miles to run. Currently showing about 45, so pretty much back on profile, but we'll keep the VS for the time being. Just keeping a good eye on our DME now, and then we'll come into track heading. And the cloud base, according to the forecast, 8,500 feet, so we should be coming out of the clouds fairly shortly. And there we go, just popping out the bottom of the clouds as we speak. We'll leave the engine anti-ice on just a touch longer, just to clear any residual icing.
Delta 2767, 12 for 11, we hang it.
Delta 2767, aircraft heading 040, vector RNAV X-ray 22 left.
22 left
And there's waypoint Cameron, so we'll go into track heading. We can come back into RAD on the RAD INS switch. And setting up our course inbound from Salt, we said that's 043. We have that set. So just waiting now until we intercept the radial, and then we'll come into VOR Loc.
On fuel trim. Should I change it?
Okay, the flight engineer now wants to trim for landing, so we'll allow him to do that.
Fuel trim to landing.
And 8,000 feet, we are now picking up the Canarsie VOR DME. We need 32 miles for the descent, showing 33 inbound towards Canarsie. We've got about another 6 miles after Canarsie, so total distance about 38 miles to run. And just showing a fuel caution there, coming back through 15 tonnes, which again was our planned arrival. We are going to be slightly below that, but we've still got plenty of fuel on board the aircraft. Engine anti-ice can go off. And we can now take the visor down. Pitched at 5 degrees currently, so we'll take the nose down to 5 degrees. Again, just to try and minimise the drag on the aircraft. So 7,000 feet, we need 28 miles to run. And showing 30, again we've got 6 miles thereafter, so 36 miles. Ground speed 270 knots, so 1,000 feet per minute, still going to have us trending back onto our profile. So just keep an eye out on that radial, and then 6DME is going to be waypoint Assault. After Assault we can descend down to 1,500 feet.
Speed 180, descend and maintain 2,000, chapter 9 Joseph.
We'll start running through some of our approach checks, so the landing briefing is complete. Taxi lights, usually we take them on with gear down, but it's going to get a little bit busy, so we'll take those on ahead of time. Rad RNS switches are set to rad. Altimeters are set, we have QNH 2962 set on both sides. Radio altimeter decision height is set at 800 feet. Flight deck door is set, cabin signs are on. Engine rating mode can go to takeoff.
1679, aircraft heading 240.
Visor and nose we have down 5 degrees. Brake fans will take on.
Alright, heading 240.
Engine reset valves are shut. Engine control schedule can go to approach. Feed pumps again, we'll leave the engineers to take care of those. Cross-feed valves are shut. Fuel weight and CFG are checked. Airspeed indicator bugs are set. And that is the approach checklist complete.
New York Brickyard 4631, 20.1 to cross Lindy 190, 250 knots, so take up.
Air 4631, approach heading 180, vector RNAV X-ray 22 left.
Heading 180, RNAV X-ray 22 left, Brickyard 4631.
Banana 2 heading 240, 6 from Eddie, cleared RNAV X-ray 22 left approach.
Okay, so we just came up on 4,700 feet, showing about 19 miles to run towards Canarsie, and 035 there on the RMI, so we'll just come slightly right on our heading to shallow up the intercept. Looks like the CDI bar is moving, so we're going to VOR Loc.
I'm sorry, say that heading one more time?
240.
240 heading 2000.
As soon as we capture the radial there, which we now have, we'll center up our heading bug.
America 1679 is going to maintain 5 now.
Not bad, 1679.
Showing 16 miles now to run to Canarsie, so we've got another 10 miles till we hit waypoint assault. Still 4,500 feet, we've got 1,500 feet to lose, so we'll just come back to VS minus 1,000 to ensure we do meet our restriction. It's a mandatory restriction at waypoint assault. And the CDI bar just coming in now, so the aircraft should start to turn out to the right momentarily. There's 1,000 feet to go, we've got 8 miles.
Brickyard 4631, descend to 13,000, altimeter 2982.
13,000, 2982, Brickyard 4631.
794, so I'm up heading 360.
Left turn heading 360.
There's our right turn. And happy we're going to make that restriction now, so again we'll just shallow up our vertical speed. We'll run through most of our landing checks ahead of time since it's going to get fairly busy as we start the turn. We'll just be holding the gear for the time being, so the cabin crew have been advised. Nose can come down. And we have the nose checked down, 4 greens. Brakes we'll check once we have the landing gear down. Radar is set to standby. Yellow hydraulics have been checked. And that's the landing checklist complete. Again, bar the gear, which will take as we commence the turnaround on final. We'll maintain 250 knots for the time being. We'll start decelerating back to VREF plus 30 just before we commence our final turn. DME to Canarsie, so we've got another 2 miles till we hit waypoint assault, just coming up on our 3,000 foot restriction. There's out hold, we need to be mandatory 1,500 feet overhead the Canarsie VOR, so we'll pre-select that ahead of time. And we've only got a few miles to do that, so we'll pre-select 1,500 feet per minute to get us down towards Canarsie. Just keeping a good eye on the DME there. Heading bug is nicely centred. We'll come back into track heading. We'll overfly the station and heading. That way we can set the 041 radial straight off the bat. Through our 6 miles, so there's vertical speed. We'll go out of choir. And we've got 5 miles to lose 1,500 feet. Just going to increase our vertical speed slightly there. We were a little bit late on starting the descent. So it's 2,000 feet per minute. And we'll start reducing that speed now back to VREF plus 30, so 235. IS acquire. And we'll be tracking out from Canarsie on the 041 radial, so we've got that pre-selected. 500 feet to go. After Canarsie, so another 2 miles, we can start our descent down to the MDA, which we said was 800 feet. To do that, we'll just be in VS, we won't go out of choir, we'll pre-select the missed approach altitude. We have IAS hold.
902, contact tower 119.1.
RT1, 902, correct.
7784, descend and maintain 2000, heading 340.
Center 2000.
And we have out hold.
794.
So we'll pre-select our missed approach altitude. 4,000 feet. And just come overhead Canarsie, so we'll go back into vertical speed. Take the gear down.
Gear coming down.
And we can start our turn at 2.6 miles. Radial just coming in. You can see the highway there off the nose.
Gear down. 4 greens.
Let's gear down, we do have 4 greens.
1579, heading 270.
270, 67, American.
And we'll take the autopilot out, we'll start the turn. And we can start bringing the speed back now to VREF, 205 knots. There's IS acquire. So just following the highway, we'll have the hotel coming up off the nose fairly shortly. This decision, we are visual, so we'll continue. And there's the hotel coming up just off the nose. It's the T-shaped building just off the 12 o'clock position. Slightly low there on the PAPI, so correcting for that. Looking good now in terms of our profile.
500 feet.
Let's check to 500.
400. 300 feet. 200.
There goes the auto throttle.
Throttle off. 100.
And cutting the throttles.
40. 20.
A little bit of a float.
Contact.
There go the reversers. Come up to full reverse. And we'll lower the nose gently onto the runway. Again, just wait until we're through 100 knots before we start the braking. There's 100 knots. Cancel the reversers.
Reverser retracted.
And coming onto the brakes now, we'll vacate off to the next right.
The overshoot height is
188, heavy contact Dallas Tower 120.1 today.
Tower 120.1, speed at 188 heavy. Tower, good afternoon, speed at Concorde 188 heavy, or 1 right.
Speedbird Concorde 188 heavy, Dallas Tower runway 1 right, clear to land, wind 050 at 3.
Clear to land 1 right, speed at 188 heavy.
Can we get down, please?
Speed's okay. 4 greens.
Okay, gear checks 4 greens. Nose,
It's down a green.
checks, brakes.
Checked, they're normal.
Okay, landing check is complete.
Thank you.
400 feet.
100 to go.
300 feet.
Decision height.
Hi, director's off. Narrowing in at 264 heavy. 200 feet.
264 heavy, Dallas Tower runway 19 right. Southwest Airlines arriving heavy Concorde
100 feet.
180 at 8.
50, 40, 30, 20, 15. Powering at 10 forward. Stick forward, please.
Sticks forward.
Only Dallas Tower, try again.
100 knots.
10, 14, about 12 out.
75.
So just continuing to taxi along Bravo, the nose can come back up to 5 degrees. We've carried out most of our afterlanding checks already. Transponder we're going to leave on for the time being. Pressurisation is checked. Brake temperature lights are checked. Slides have been disarmed, so that's the afterlanding checks complete. So just continuing down Bravo. We're looking for taxiway Alpha for the turn.
Flight 767, turn left heading 360, maintain 2000.
360, 2000, Delta point 767.
So this is Victor Alpha just coming up. Alpha's the next left. And from Alpha we'll be coming in towards Alpha 1 for the gate.
Brickyard 4534, descend and maintain 4000.
4000, Victor 47.
So slowing the aircraft down for the turn. Quite a lot of ground vehicles around, so we'll take the taxi nice and slowly, keep a good eye out.
City 794, turn left heading 250, 6 from any 2000, full established, cleared on nav X-ray 22 left.
Alright, heading 250, 2000 still established and cleared for the RNAV GPS X-ray, rolling 22 left.
It's pretty hectic here on the ground at JFK. Looks like we'll be good to cross after this fuel truck. Okay, as soon as the GPU goes there, we'll cross. So stand 5's the Virgin 747. Stand 1 is all the way down the end. Stand 4 just coming up on the left.
Brickyard 4631, turn left heading 090.
090, Brickyard 4631.
And stand 3 looks like the MD-11's on stand 2. We'll get the taxi lights off. And stand 1 right down at the end, as I say, buried away in the corner. It's going to be quite a tight turn as well with the nose wheel so far behind. We're really going to have to oversteer the turn here.
American 1679, heading 310.
Hey, 310, American 1679.
Brickyard 4631, descend and maintain 4000.
Descend and maintain 4000, Brickyard 4631.
Flight 767, turn left heading 330.
Heading 330, Delta point 767.
Okay, so the park brake can go on. I'm running through the parking checks. Brakes are set to park. Landing lights are off. Visor can come up. So we'll just wait for that to retract. We need hydraulic power there, so we can't shut down the engines just yet. So visor is closed. We'll have the ground engineer connect the ground power to the aircraft. HP fuel valves can go to shut. Just leave the number 2 running for the time being until we have ground power. Throttle masters. We'll just leave the number 2 on there. Throttle masters are off. Anti-collision lights, again, we'll leave running until we have all 4 engines shut down. Seatbelts can come off. Engine anti-ice is off. Ignition is off. Ground conditioning, again, we're going to have to wait on the ground crew to connect. And for the rest of our checks, we'll leave those to the flight engineer to carry out the rest of the shutdown. We ended up arriving on the bay with just under 10 tonnes, so a little bit less than we planned, but overall I think a pretty successful first outing in Concorde.
So there you go, guys. We managed to get Concorde safely from London over towards New York in a pretty timely fashion. And it was really nice to finally be able to dig a little bit deeper into Concorde, its systems and its operation. I really enjoyed the flight. I certainly hope that you guys did as well. If you did, please consider giving the video a like. If you want to see more content from the channel, then please consider subscribing as well. As ever, a very big thank you to my channel members and patrons for all of your support. It is thoroughly appreciated. I do hope that all of you are having a great day wherever you are. Take really good care, and I will see you all again soon.
Speedbird 2, for the last time, you're clear to land on 27 right. The wind is 350 degrees at 8 knots.